focus of the entire world currently fixed on Taliban's actions in Afghanistan, Pakistan has come up with a new plan to turn the spotlight away from its proxy. In this Save Taliban mission, Pakistan has decided to use ISIS Khorasan as a cover. As per an intel report accessed by Times Now, Pakistan-backed terror outfits Lashkar and the Haqqani network cadres have infiltrated into the ISIS Khorasan module so that the Pak deep state is promoting the ISIS-K to ensure that it appears more brutal when compared to its own proxy, the Taliban.
You're watching the News Hour Special Edition, Debate Number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
All right, let me open this up. RSN Singh, author, one of India's foremost strategic affairs expert, Colonel Shailendra Singh, defense expert, also with us. Raja Faisal is a Pakistani journalist. Abdul Samad Yaqub, spokesperson of the PTI. Good evening to all of you. RSN Singh, let me begin by asking you, we are not surprised by the revelation in this intel report. We know that the deep state is working overtime to push its proxy so that terror forces are more stronger than ever.
Yes, if I may add here that, what Americans were, fighting was not an insurgency but a Pakistan-sponsored proxy war. And in proxy war, you need some kind of a deniability, right? I'm saying they were fighting a proxy war because the entire logistics, training and, command and control, everything was with the Pakistanis all through. And the Americans knew about it. We also knew about it. There was nothing, I'm speaking nothing very, exclusive or great. But the fact of the matter is that, the relationship between various groups, jihadi groups, is very, very amorphous. They cooperate and coordinate in their own ways. And, you could have, and, there is a power dynamics which has been set in motion. So when, 9/11 took place, there was change in the power dynamics. All jihadi groups started gravitating towards Al-Qaeda. And now what has happened is that, after the ISIS came up, there was a split in most of the, jihadi groups in the Al-Qaeda in Arabian Peninsula, then Al-Qaeda in Maghreb, and, in Jamia Islamia in Indonesia, Abu Sayyaf in Philippines. So now what has happened is that now that the new phenomenon is Taliban, all of these, they will gravitate towards, towards Taliban, all controlled, monitored and manipulated by the Pakistan military intelligence establishment. Because remember, now they have a state. Now they have a state, and if you take the entire, globe, globe into account, there is not one state amongst these 57 countries, except for Pakistan, which has, clearly become a sponsor or state sponsor of this kind of a terror, and now their sponsors are ruling, are in control of a country.
Absolutely,
so it's
they
a
have
very,
a country
very
now to
development,
themselves. And allow me to bring in Maruf Raza. Maruf, remember we were talking about the number of Pakistani soldiers on the ground. You gave us details, inside information, but it now seems and apparently clear that Pakistani deep state was behind the Kabul Airport bombing.
Is that question for me?
Yes, Maruf.
Okay. Hi, good evening. I always thought that it seemed to be too well timed for the bombing to have taken place just a day or two before the American self-imposed deadline of 31st August, because it was basically to give a message to America, its friends and the Westerners, that your time's up, you need to go. The second aspect is that America thought they were being equally smart by getting out well before 11th of September, 9/11, so that it wouldn't give the Taliban the opportunity to swear in a government just on 9/11, 20 years after the 9/11 attacks. I mean, there are all sorts of theories doing the round, but please understand that the entire post-American withdrawal operations of the militant groups in Afghanistan was controlled and orchestrated by Pakistan. This became only too obvious when they ran into their first stumbling block, that was in Panjshir Valley. And the entire Pakistan Army military establishment got behind it, including use of air power and air force, which is something that Pakistan is not averse to doing against anybody which stands up against them. They did it against Nawab Bukti in Balochistan. They've done this here. And they are known to be very, very harsh against Baluchis, taking them up in the air and throwing them out of helicopters to die on the ground. But the bottom line is that how is it, and I said it from day one, that these suicide bombers could infiltrate into the areas where there was a Taliban presence and there was also a healthy mix of foreigners, including US soldiers. Obviously, this was an orchestrated attack.
Orchestrated,
suddenly out of nowhere,
the terrorists, the suicide bombers that you are referring to had an all-access pass that is printed and dispatched from Pakistan. Perhaps the GHQ in Rawalpindi. Raza Faisal, can you still be in denial?
First of all, I would request all of the participants to please allow me at least 2 minutes and then you can interrupt me. Very first thing I would like to talk about, number one, you have mentioned here that, you've started blaming Pakistan for ISIS Khorasan as well. Let me remind you, and let me first, tell you this, that world blames Pakistan, but when it comes to India, while blaming something to us, it keeps on mentioning that there are intelligence reports. Well, we have seen intelligence reports coming out from you about Afghanistan in past as well, related to 350,000 forces of ANA, which was a failure. Your intelligence reports kept on saying that they will be good enough to counter Taliban, 70,000 Taliban. That was a failure. Second, you said Panjshir would be a success. It was a failure. So your intelligence reports have been failure after a failure. Second, I just wanted to say, let me remind you that Taliban, they have been fighting against ISIS Khorasan since a long time. I would remind you that 2 years ago, Taliban in Panjshir and Kunar province, Taliban had a crackdown against ISIS Khorasan and they killed many of them. And then later on, you must have heard about this, or if you haven't, let me remind you that last year there was a tweet by Zalmay Khalilzad. In that tweet, he tweeted that allied forces, they are allying with Taliban against ISIS Khorasan.
You can go on, Raza Faisal, you can go on, you can go on saying these things, but let me remind you one thing. You've given us 3-4 reminders. I just have one reminder for you. Where was Osama bin Laden found?
Well, he was found in Pakistan.
Yeah, he was found in, and who was Osama bin Laden? Osama bin Laden was a UN ambassador found in Pakistan.
He once said that let us sleep once. If America has been sleeping so many times,
Maruf has a point. Yes, Maruf, quickly.
So many times. Yes, we have been sleeping once as well.
Okay, Maruf, quickly.
Okay, I just want to add to the question you've said. Pakistanis would always turn around and say, well, we didn't know about it, that he was living on our land. On the other hand, any foreigner coming into Pakistan is shadowed and followed. And the second aspect is that Pakistan was keeping him to claim a bigger bounty than they would have got out of America otherwise. And the fact is that if Osama bin Laden did not have the blessings of the military establishment, why is it that the Pakistani military brass was marched up to Pakistan's parliamentarians, the Senate, and asked to give a clarification that how did America come and break through the fortress of Pakistan's air and military space when Pakistan's military says they are the guardians of Pakistan. This was the first time this happened after the humiliation of the 71 war, which is going to be around the corner 50 years in December. So obviously, and the military sheepishly came in to give an explanation. They were found flat-footed. So there's no need to ask Pakistanis this question. Only foolish Americans will ask them this foolish question that are you aligned
I
with
didn't
us or are
intend
you
to
aligned
actually,
with the
because he was,
Taliban?
giving reminders after reminders. I thought, this is one reminder that can wake him up. But Abdul Samad, before I bring you in, a quick comment from Colonel Shailendra Singh. Sir, you've been listening to this intently. What do you think of this?
Let us start understanding what Raja Faisal is saying. And before that, I think Pakistan would always like to have a control on Taliban through the various networks,
The Haqqani network.
various other groups. I can understand, but how do Haqqani? My mistake. Haqqani. So, but I don't understand. Will Pakistan be able to give them funds? I don't think. I think Pakistan would like to earn funds from that. I'll tend to agree, if at all Raja Faisal is right. Failure of intelligence. But where was the intelligence? We never gave you the intelligence that Afghan army is 3.5 lakh. We didn't give you this. It is known world over. It was given by US. Now you are also saying Panjshir intelligence was a failure from our side. When did we give you the intelligence that you are going to have a bloody nose there? You see, what we gave you the intelligence, which you are not owning up to the world, is what are your 2 battalions doing there? What was your Air Force doing there? And I agree, even if you had the courage to go there, fight, why it is not being owned up? Why it is so typical of Pakistan army? They are, you see, as an army man, it hurts me. Any army person who gives life for his country for irrespective wrong decisions, but needs to be respected. You are not owning up those I-cards. It's becoming a tradition. Raja Faisal जी, आप जैसे लोगों ने अपने देश में एक नई मुहिम चलानी है कि no, we will not let Pakistan army personnel die so carelessly. If at all they are there, let us own up. Have the courage of conviction to own up. You may be right, you may be wrong for the world.
Okay, let's get a response from Abdul Samad Yaqub.
Wrong. One side you...
Yaqub Saab, will Pakistan own up?
Accusing Pakistan for these airports bombing it's all rubbish, nonsense. It's just like a fiction or it's good for
just like 26/11. No, just like Pakistan's role in 26/11 was a fiction, this is also a fiction.
Accusing Pakistan on your speculations or calling it an intelligence report. Where is your intelligence report? Colonel Shailendra was saying that when did they give us the intelligence report? But I am asking you, where is your intelligence report in which you have mentioned that you have intelligence report that Pakistan have conducted or carried out such attacks? And by the way, this ISS was formed in 2014 in Afghanistan, and Taliban have been fighting with them since 6 years.
Sir, it's just a new name of an old organization. These are all Pakistani proxies that you keep renaming and redesigning. Maruf.
Let's be
see, I just want to ask.
Could you please give me source of it?
Pranesh, I want to ask.
Source of your information other than your intelligence reports.
No, intelligence reports to chhod dijiye. There is enough information. Anybody who's a scholar of substance on Pakistan will run into 2-3 constants. One is the influence that the Pakistani military has on every aspect of Pakistani life. Whether the lion's share of the budget, I used to think it's 54%, but Hussain Haqqani told me on one of my shows that they take up 72% of the annual expenditure. So running Pakistan is their business and it feeds a number of their agendas. Please read Aisha Siddiqa's book. She's your citizen. She's your country person. And she has exposed all your military business agendas of Pakistan Army. The second is your former Army Chief Mirza Aslam Beg, after Ziaul Haq's death, spelled out what is your strategic agenda. It is not to take Kashmir per se. It is to create a forward strategic depth, which is to control territories from the banks of Indus up to the banks of Oxus. And that is why after 30 years of effort, your dream has come true. In a way, it is your coming out party after the humiliation of the 71 war. But let me tell you one thing, that much as you all are rejoicing about whatever advantages you think you have gained in Afghanistan, I've just seen a piece by a Pakistani written from London. He said, one, Afghanistan is a financial black hole. Afghanistan needs money to be sustained. China can sustain it, Pakistan can't. Pakistan's anyway fighting for funds itself. Afghanistan offers nothing of any substance. All the Pakistanis who are rejoicing over taking over Afghanistan, ask any of them this question: would you like to relocate and set up a home in Kabul? The weather is quite nice. Maybe you like it. But remember, the invaders who came via Kabul from Babur to much later, they all passed through Kabul, but they came for the golden goose in India. They didn't stay back in Kabul. So, and most importantly, I'm actually quite happy you guys are in control of Kabul and you're going to go down in the quicksand of Afghanistan, because you will have not enough energy to fight on two fronts.
Well, let's see when that happens. Only time will tell. But RSN Singh, I give you the last word on the show. We've spoken enough about Pakistan's role. What do we do to ensure that the terror state, Terroristan, is punished?
No, firstly, I must say that my information says that 7 officers, 12 JCOs and 75 other ranks of SSD are, have been killed, and there are about 160 injured, and that is in Panjshir. And this gentleman from Pakistan, he cannot lie that Peshawar, SWAT and Quetta military hospitals are overflowing. Overflowing with wounded patients, wounded and dead. Wounded. Now don't say that this is some figment of imagination. One major name is circulating around is Ayaz Gilani. बस आप तो कारगिल में भी गलत इंफॉर्मेशन थी, कोई मरा ही नहीं था नदर लाइन इन्फेंट्री का. आप तो बस वहां गए और बस आपको देख के सारे पंचशील के फाइटर्स जस्ट मिनटेड अवे. नहीं आप how can you predicate nation?
Just to add to what RSN Singh is saying, you were in denial about Kasab's nationality. You were in denial about Osama. You are still in denial about Saeed Salahuddin, Masood Azhar. The fact of the matter is that terror is used as a state policy by the GHQ that runs Pakistan, not the puppet Prime Minister. We've run completely out of time, gentlemen. I thank all of you for joining us on debate number 1 on the special edition of the News Hour.